Dear colleagues and guests, welcome to today's webinar, European Dimensions of Lesser-Known Wood Species. My name is Pavlina Pancova-Pšimková, and I will walk you through today's session. The webinar is jointly organized by the Faculty of Forestry and Wood Technology, Mendel University in Brno, representation of South Marine region to the EU, and Europe Direct Brno. Webinar is part of our project Wood Plus. The project interdisciplinary collaborative learning and teaching for resilient wood resources and innovations in a digital world is co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Project is co-funded under the strategic partnership of Erasmus Plus with the duration of 36 months. We say that with Wood Plus, objectives are targeted, opportunities are taken, and make a difference under the Erasmus Plus umbrella. Activities are conducted by a consortium of 4 partners: Mendel University in Brno, Czech Republic, acting as a coordinator, University of Natural Resources and Life Science, Vienna, Austria, University of Hamburg, Germany, University of Ljubljana, Slovenia, and an associated partner, InnovaWood from Belgium. Wood Plus objectives are to support the additional inspiration of the new generation of researchers, to raise the awareness of a wide range of material application, to redesign the learning environment with innovative online modules, to individualize and internationalize the learning pathways. Wood Plus aims to strengthen collaboration in the field of wood science and technology with particular focus on less used wood species, to achieve brain circulation for students and researchers through strengthened language competencies, to contribute to future-oriented curricula with a broader focus on tree species diversity, to develop green sector skills by promoting industrial exploitation of less used wood species for high value chain utilization by focusing on innovative material developments. Wood Plus also aims to stimulate and support students and researchers' creativity by fostering education diversity networks, to take advantage of diverse educational and research backgrounds, to foster digital competencies by pushing distant learning and innovative learning methods. Wood Plus activities include intellectual outputs such as webinars, ebook, virtual laboratory, experimental design and data analysis, multi-prior events such as conference, and learning, teaching and training activities such as summer schools, workshops, and long-term teaching assignments. We will hear today mainly about the European Forest Strategy and to discuss the views of the European Commission, particularly of the DG Environment, the views of the members of the European Parliament, and also the view of the member states, the Czech Republic. The overall objectives is to enhance our knowledge of the EU role in the forestry and partially also in the wood sector and the interlinkages between the players. I would like to particularly welcome our today's speaker, Veronika Vrecinova, Raphael Lerouvier, Michal Věžník, and Michaela Jedličková. Thank you for joining us. Veronika Vrecinova was elected a member of the European Parliament in 2019. She is a member of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development. Since 2016, she also has been the chairwoman of the Association for Rural Renewal, which has more than 830 members from all over the Czech Republic. Before her European engagement, she was a member of the Chamber of the Deputies Parliament of the Czech Republic, where she dealt with agricultural issues. In addition, she was the vice chairwoman of the Agricultural Committee and a member of the Social Policy Committee. Ms. Vrecinova is going to speak in Czech. The Czech-English translation is provided.
Thank you very much for your invitation to your webinar, and I hope that my view, also a political view on the forest strategy, will be interesting and useful for you. Just briefly on the forest strategy. Forest strategy by 2030 was presented in July, and it's one of the strategies that follows the Green Deal, which is a framework for the entire policy in terms of climate and environment protection. Individual strategies are based on this work, as well as the follow-up legislation. Before we had the forest strategy, EU introduced the strategy of biodiversity and farm to fork. I am a member of the Agriculture Committee of the EU, so I've been focusing on farm to fork strategy, but we have been discussing also the biodiversity strategy and the forest strategy. Contrary to the two documents, I mean, biodiversity and farm to fork strategy, the forestry strategy differs in basic aspects. Forestry lies still within the competence of the national government. It's not within the competence of the EU, your EP or EC. It's been clear that the European Commission has been trying using the issue of environment protection and Green Deal. EU has been trying to enter also topics that still remain within the competence of national government. I assume that a lot of you read the strategy. Still, I would like just briefly to sum it up, some of the basic aspects. Firstly, it's the planting of 3 billion new trees by 2030 within the EU. It's the enhancement of forest area under protection, like nature reserves and so on. Extending the area of original forests, higher biodiversity in terms of tree species, and development of the green in cities. Reducing logging, adapting to forests to the climate change, reducing the use of valuable trees for energy, and reduce the cascading use of timber. So first is timber products, then renovations, and last and only last is the use of wood for energy. And the last aspect is improving the forest monitoring. The strategy is a combination of two approaches, or two measures. The first approach comprises the basic processes in forestry, and it's not necessary to explain it to forestry students, how to take care of forests, to be healthy and resilient in terms of harmful agents and weather. The second approach of the strategy is the political definition, and that's what we are focusing on. European Union, in terms of other strategies, committed to reducing CO2 emissions. We should be CO2 neutral by 2050. So this global goal has to be reflected and anchored also in other pieces of legislation. As forests are one of the biggest carbon absorbents, we have to talk about this topic. Therefore, there are measures for increasing the forested area and using the timber for other but energy purposes. We often forget that European forests are not only storing carbon, they are also providing a valuable source, meaning timber. We use it in construction, building industry, in other products, and it's clear that taking care of forests, it's not easy and cheap. to be able to take care of forests and manage forests, if we don't want them want to leave the forests unmanaged, there must be a economic benefit of forests. This means that our main goal should be to find a balance between environment protection, meaning forest protection, and the possibilities to use it for commercial purposes. To be fair, the strategy includes aspects of using economic tools. However, the EU is not that creative, so these economic tools include only subsidies. I'm afraid that subsidies are not the plain vanilla solution, as the sources are limited. Therefore, I believe that would be better to find a balance. It's a topic going through the entire Green Deal. I'm convinced that without finding balance between nature protection, environment protection, and commercial aspects and economic situation, unless we find a balance, there will be no solutions provided. And we will be going from one extreme to another. Therefore, I'm always trying to search for balance. Important is to be self-sufficient without subsidies. However, I'm aware that planting new trees is costly. They probably will not be able to find a balance. We can agree that it's necessary to plant new trees for decades. Planting trees doesn't generate profit for decades. Therefore, I understand it and support planting new trees fully. And it deserves, planting new trees deserves certain subsidy. To conclude with just a brief summary, the strategy itself, I have no objections in terms of the strategy itself. What's in the strategy should be known to every responsible forest manager. The discussed procedures been known to our ancestors that managed their forests in order to pass them to their descendants in the same, if not better, situation as they were handed over. Each country has different structure of forest ownership. There are countries where public forests prevail, as in the Czech Republic. There are countries where private ownership prevails. Therefore, I'm convinced that the forestry should stay within the competence of national government. Countries with public forest or with a state forest, if the situation is easier, as the state enterprises should present a certain flagship, and the government can order and or direct the managers can say, okay, we don't need profit from you, but important is the way the forest is managed in order to achieve the goal. Main task doesn't the main task doesn't stay with the EU, but on the individual governments, individual countries. The strategy can be seen and considered as a instruction, but the fulfillment, the EU is not able to influence whether the goals will be fulfilled. This stays within the competence of individual member states. One thing is clear: we have to change the way we manage the forests. Spruce monocultures that are so common in the Central Europe and in the Czech Republic will not be able to resist the climate change, heat waves, species migration, bark beetle, etc. We have experienced it. We have experienced the situation with bark beetle ourselves. Higher diversity will help both forests animals living in the forest, and us as people as well. So far, my contribution. Thank you very much for the possibility to speak to you. I hope to meet you in person in the future.
Thank you very much for your contribution. LKWS is a policy officer which is acting in the field of forest protection and sustainable forest management at the DG Environment of the European Commission. He also acted as editor of the publication called Land-Based Wildfires Prevention, Principles and Experience on Managing Landscape, Forest and Woodlands for Safety and Resilience in Europe. Raphael graduated just 2 years ago from the ETH Zurich.
Hello, everyone. As introduced, I'm Raphael Olivier from the Forest Sector DG Environment of the European Commission. I just want to start off saying that I'm very happy to be here. It's really a pleasure to be invited by Mendel University. And it's actually the first time that I'm invited to speak at a university. And it means a lot to me considering that I was still a student 2 years ago. Also, thank you for Mrs. Fleschonova for your introduction, and you pointed to a lot of very interesting aspects of the EU forest strategy, and especially trying to find a balance between the different aspects and uses of forests, be they economic, environmental, social, and so on. So I will now give you a brief presentation of the EU's new forest strategy. I will try to be fast enough for questions at the end of my intervention. But first, and also related to these balanced use of forest, I must tell you that the development of the EU forest strategy was actually led by 3 Directorate Generals of the European Commission. The Director General for the Environment, for Agriculture and for Climate. And this well represents the many roles that forests play. But if you wanted to do this correctly, it should be at least 3 people sitting where I am. But let's dive in. So first, as an introduction, I will quickly talk about 2 other initiatives that are relevant to the EU's forest strategy. And first of all, the European Green Deal, which was communicated in December 2019. The European Green Deal is a very broad set of policy initiatives by the Commission with the overarching goal of making the European Union climate neutral by 2050. And a notable feature is that all EU actions and policies now have to contribute to the European Green Deal objectives. And the European Green Deal also sets the stage for other relevant initiatives, and it calls for an EU biodiversity strategy, mentions the possibility of legislation on ecosystem restoration, and calls for our new EU forest strategy. The EU's biodiversity strategy for 2030 is a long-term plan to protect nature and to reverse the degradation of ecosystems. And it aims to put Europe's biodiversity on a path to recovery, and it contains many actions and commitments, and notably to legally protect a minimum of 30% of the EU's land area, and to strictly protect at least 1/3 of this protected area. So 10% of the total, and notably these 10% should include all remaining EU primary and old growth forests. And it also mentions a nature restoration law with binding targets for ecosystem restoration, which is being developed by the Commission right now. So now to the EU forest strategy. As was said, it was announced in the European Green Deal, and it builds on the 2030 biodiversity strategy. And its key objectives are effective afforestation, forest preservation, and forest restoration in Europe. And this strategy explicitly should cover the whole forest cycle and promote the many services that forests provide. And that is why the core of the strategy, these economic, social, and environmental functions of forests. And it is really reflected in this multifunctionality of forests, where we try to keep central to the strategy. And the strategy sets out a vision and very concrete actions to improve the quantity and quality of European forests and to strengthen their protection, restoration, and resilience. It also aims to adapt Europe's forests to new conditions that we can expect, and weather extremes, and the really high uncertainty that is being brought about by climate change. And this is actually a precondition for forests to continue to deliver their environmental functions, but also the socioeconomic functions, and to ensure vibrant rural areas. Now, the strategy also highlights the contribution of foresters and of the entire forest-based value chain to achieve a sustainable and climate neutral economy by 2050. And finally, the strategy was built on the best and latest available scientific evidence. And it will, of course, be implemented in respect of subsidiarity. I see that we might respectfully disagree with Mr. Fischer-Nova on this. At the Commission, we do think that the EU has a variety of competences that are shared with member states that also address forests, and these include climate, environment, and agriculture. And the Union has already exercised these competences respecting principle of subsidiarity, but we can further discuss this later. So we'll look at some, but not all of the concrete actions that are part of the forest strategy. And first, action to support the socioeconomic functions of forests and to boost a forest-based bioeconomy, of course, within sustainable boundaries. And there, the strategy addresses the bioeconomy for long-lived wood products, a sustainable use of bioenergy, the non-wood forest-based bioeconomy, which includes ecotourism, and skills and empowerment of people. So here, the Commission plans to establish a methodology to quantify the climate benefits of wood construction products, and to consider long-lived wood products, of course, in full respect of biodiversity objectives in the upcoming carbon farming initiative, which will also include carbon removal certificates. The Commission will adopt strengthened sustainability criteria in the revision of the Renewable Energies Directive, which was already proposed. And it will review, complement, and update the Taxonomy Climate Delegated Act for Forestry and Bioenergy where it is necessary. Then for the non-wood bioeconomy, the Commission will promote all coordinated regional and national programs on a sustainable production of non-wood forest products, but also promote the collaboration around the tourism sector and development of standards and norms for ecotourism activities. It will encourage forest and forestry stakeholders to establish a skills partnership under the European Pact for Skills, and promote cooperation and connect pupils, students, teachers, and stakeholders through the Education for Climate Coalition on the role of forests. Now, on the protection, the restoration, and increase of the use of forests, and to ensure resilient and multifunctional ecosystems, we plan to address so the protection of prime and organ forests, forest restoration, sustainable forest management, reforestation, afforestation of forests, and incentives for forest managers and forest owners. There, as we said before, the Commission plans to protect all remaining primary and old growth forests. And to do this, we need to define them, and we need to map them, which is currently ongoing in my unit. And for information, we currently estimate about 3% of EU forests to be primary or old growth. And then the Commission will propose a legally binding instrument for ecosystem restoration, which of course goes beyond forests, and a first proposal should be presented relatively soon. Now on reforestation, afforestation, the Commission is developing guidelines on biodiversity-friendly afforestation and reforestation. It plans to plant 3 billion additional trees by 2030. We came to this number by doubling the rate of expected new trees between 2020 and 2030. This will of course be based on the overall principle of planting, growing the right tree in the right place and for the right purpose, because planting a tree is obviously not always a good thing per se. And so we're also preparing a tree counter, which should be available online very soon. And the Commission will develop a definition and adopt guidelines for closer to nature forestry practices, and this will include a voluntary certification scheme. Now, on financial incentives for forest owners and managers, we plan to increase the uptake of rural development funds that are available for forests, which, because right now the uptake is relatively low, to promote the set of ecosystem payment services, ecosystem service payment schemes in member states, because the idea is really to give foresters fair remuneration for the action they take for the environment that are currently not addressed by the market. We also plan to provide advice and technical guidance on the development of ecosystem service payment schemes, and to promote forest-related remuneration schemes in an action plan for carbon farming, which will also include a carbon removal certification. Now, on the monitoring side of things, we will address the use of remote sensing and ground-based monitoring, strengthen FISA. FISA is the Forest Information System for Europe. And we'll present a new legislative proposal on forest observation and reporting. So this new legislative proposal that will be put forward by the Commission will of course be done after an appropriate impact assessment, and it will ensure a coordinated EU forest monitoring, which is really crucial to better understand our forests and to have access to more homogeneous and more frequently reported data on European forests. We want to strengthen FISA, which should become the cornerstone for harmonized forest-related data in Europe, and will only include open access information. And also within FISA, we will prepare and publish regular reports and lay summaries on forests in the EU. And the idea is to make forest data accessible to policymakers, to researchers, but also to any individual that is interested on data in European forests and forest policy. Finally, there are a few enabling elements. So we will address research and innovation, forest governance, and implementation and enforcements. There's some of the actions are research and innovation partnership, strictly focused on forestry, where we'll enhance EU cooperation. We will change the forest governance within the Commission. We'll create a new expert group that includes multiple member state representatives from different ministries to reflect all the roles of forests, and also create an expert group with a broader civil membership to take into account positions of stakeholders and a wider population. And then we plan to step up implementation with intensified dialogue with the member states and European networks of environmental agencies and yes, inspectors, police, prosecutors and judges to step up the current implementation. So this already brings us to the end of my presentation, as I'm trying to make time for questions. And yes, so I invite whoever wants to take the floor, and I'd be happy to questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. So thanks for listening.
If we look on the forest, from the, let's say, philosophical point of view, do you think that the EU forest strategy will change our view, not only our view as foresters, but mainly the view of the public and these other stakeholders on the forest?
So we hope, we do hope that there will be a change in the way that we view forests, and that we see it less in silos, is because we have people seeing them only for resources, some that see it only for storing carbon, some that see it just to be left aside for biodiversity. And we think what is really important is to not concentrate on one of them and try to merge them and really see forests as a very multifunctional tool, again, as we highlighted in strategy, to use it, to see the benefits for all the different uses that we have. But this goes again, so for resources, for economic purposes, but also for air, water, soil protection, well-being, sports, culture. And we need to see forests for everything they can provide. And that is also why we need to properly remunerate people who work with forests, so that they can keep providing all these services, and they have the right tools and incentives to do it.
In that context, the European Forestry Strategy, or the related documents, also propose the Map My Tree citizen monitoring platform. Do you think that that will also help to engage more public and to actually be more part of the story? Because always when people become part of the story, part of something which is around them, they are more keen to care for it, to be relevant. Someone stated that over the COVID period, we all became the 3D huggers. So whether you think, what will be the platform, how it will work, and if it will be more, if you believe it will more bring the public to the understanding of forest and forestry issues?
Yes. So first, just to give some background, Map My Tree is related to the 3 billion additional trees initiative. So the Commission wants to reach the planting of 3 billion additional trees by 2030, and Map My Tree will be an online platform to count all the trees that are planted through this initiative. And there we invite in the first pilot phase organizations that are already active in tree planting to report trees on the platform, and at a later stage, probably in the next spring, any individuals who are interested in participating and in planting trees to report them to this initiative. And of course, we think that there's a huge potential in this initiative to get people or EU citizens closer to these forestry policy and to be directly involved in planting trees and realize that it is not as easy as it looks like, because of course the focus will not be in putting saplings into the soil, but in monitoring, in taking care of the tree and seeing it grow, and making sure that we don't plant anything anywhere. So yes, we hope definitely that this will create a stronger connection between people and trees. But yes, we could call it tree hugging.
Okay, Peter, please go ahead.
Rafael, thanks for very nice and important presentation you gave. I think you showed us that there are several viewpoints, at least two I would like to mention. The one is to protect old forest, to protect the biodiversity. Of course, this helps to keep the carbon storage, but it doesn't help in increasing the carbon storage, no? Because old forests are more or less on a maximum level. So in addition, and you mentioned this, we need to afforestate, we need to plant new trees. And these systems on degraded land, they are very productive. They are very active in storage of carbon. Do you think there is on the European level the idea, the discussion, the politic to combine both aspects a little bit, to have protected forest, to have old forest, and to have active carbon storing forests? Do you think this is a contrary discussion, or do you think there's the possibility to combine both approaches?
So to what I see it, it is very much possible to combine these approaches, and also old growth forests do store a lot of carbon also in the soil and the root system. Now we don't want to focus too much on forests as a carbon sink, as a reason to stop to stop reductions of CO2 emissions elsewhere. But we, as in all environmental problems, there's no simple solution, or there's no only solution, and we need to look at all solutions at the same time. So we will need forest for biodiversity, forest for protection. We will need forests, as we have in our carbon farming initiative, mainly for used as carbon sinks, but at the same time they can also be positive for biodiversity, and they can also be positive for the bioeconomy by producing more raw materials and wood. So I think that we see more synergies in all these different issues.
Thank you for your question and answer. Now I would like to move to our next speaker. Michal Věžník was elected a member of the European Parliament in 2019. He is a member of the Committee on the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety. Michal Věžník is also a scientist focused on landscape ecology, entomology, and protected area management. He worked as a Vice Dean for Science for 8 years at the Faculty of Ecology and Environmental Sciences at the Technical University in Zvolen, Slovakia. In 2018, he was commissioned by the Slovakian government as ambassador for the least developed regions to develop a strategy to protect the Carpathian beech forest as a World Natural Heritage Site.
Thank you very much for inviting me today for this event, and also special thanks to my co-speakers for their presentations, which I found very valuable and informative. Nevertheless, I would really have some maybe insights from my point of view to this topic, to the topic of EU forest strategy, which to me seems really one of the most significant strategies that are there on the table right now with regards to the European Green Deal and all of our efforts to really reach the climate neutrality, and also to tackle the issues with, for instance, biodiversity decline, which is also the essence of our reality today throughout Europe. First of all, I would really like to stress a very interesting moment regarding the EU forest strategy. You definitely noticed that it is called EU forest strategy, but quite interestingly, in Slovak and in Czech Republic, it is translated to be a EU forestry strategy, which to me seems quite peculiar, because I'm quite convinced that the scope of this strategy is far beyond the forestry, and it really should deal with forests in a broad scope, in a broad scale, not only in the terms of the management that the forestry delivers. And it's pretty clear from what has already been presented that the scope is much more broader, and it includes also strict protection of forests and restoration of forests beyond the usual tasks that are there confined to the forestry. So we should really keep in our mind that this is really a much broader strategy that
really aims to somehow define the roles that the forests have to play in current situation. And the current situation is really not an easy one. The forest will really have to find the answers how to satisfy all the demands of European society that is put on forest. And that might include not only the traditional use of forest for timber, but really the forest will have to find an answer how to deliver in order to satisfy the increased interest, for instance, in biomass, that we will really have to find out our way how to sustainably use the biomass of forest, which goes also for the let's say bioenergy sector and all that stuff, which will definitely put a lot of stress towards our forests. We also have to find our ways how to really change the direction of the biodiversity within our forests, because we see quite a strong decline in forest species, in forest ecosystems, in forest integrity, in forest resilience, and all the issues related to the structure of ecosystems or forest ecosystems in Europe. And we will also have to reflect the increasing demand of various ecosystem services that should be delivered for the human society. Really, the demands of people are changing on a rapid pace. It's no longer that important that people have a lot of wood for their fireplaces. They really visit the forest for relaxation, for education, and all that has to be also reflected. And in that regard, I'm really happy to see that the EU forest strategy is really going this way, and it's really encompassing a lot of issues that were not touched in the previous let's say era. In that regard, I would really like to stress that there is quite a lot of misconception being there regarding the issue of the competencies that already have been mentioned by my four speakers. There is a tendency to really see the forestry as an exclusive competence of member states, where European Union should probably be having only some supportive or coordination role. But frankly, this is not true. It's very clear from various aspects that EU has a shared competence on forests in general, and in that regard also on forestry, because based on the EU treaty, it has a very clear competence on such fields like energy, environment, agriculture, which all are very, very closely confined also to forestry. You cannot have forestry that would not also include these aspects, and not to mention that if European Union would not have competencies on forest, there would be no Natura 2000 sites and forest habitats included into this concept. So really, for instance, I have a letter from President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, where she again states that, well, forestry issues and forestry-related issues and forest-related issues are definitely a shared competence, and European Union has to play also a legislative role in that. So I really think we should really come over this issue and really focus on the real problems and solving of the real problems, than to really get entangled in such fights of competencies which are not based on a real agenda. Nevertheless, it has been already presented that the forest or European forest strategy is really a very thorough, very broad scale document. And in that regard, I would maybe like to stress or focus on some particular issues. You will find a lot of mentioning of sustainable forest management in there. And I would really like to stress that the strategy is going beyond the usual framework of sustainable forest management, where forest is managed sustainably as long as it is certified in this way. The agenda really calls for a more thorough approach, and on several aspects it calls for new frameworks regarding the monitoring, reporting, and data collection of forest, also in the relation with the formal acknowledged sustainability of forest management or forestry in general. So we will definitely see some legislation on this aspect, going for more details. The reason for that is that the sustainability of forestry is really regarded on a very formal level. We claim that we have sustainable forestry, and this is based mainly on the idea that the area of forested land is really increasing in Europe, which definitely is a fact. But if we focus more on the quality of forest, we see quite a different picture. And that can be very well seen, especially in regard with the biodiversity. We know that we have about 30% of the area being of European Union being included into Natura 2000 sites. And in that regard, there is reporting of the state of these protected habitats and species each 7 years, I suppose. And the conclusions of such reporting are quite grim, I have to say. Only 17% of the forest habitats that are part of this Area 2000 network are in a good shape. The rest of them is really in a bad or in a bad shape. And what is even more intriguing, we don't have any comparable data on the rest of the forest outside of the Natura 2000 network. So we don't really know what their shape is, but probably it will be even worse because no protection management is really like the focus, the biodiversity or the forest habitats is really going there or taking place there. So we really ask the Commission, and we really ask for the legislation that would really cover also the general forest in Europe, and that would really deliver and provide us with data that could really address the issue of the quality of the forest we have throughout Europe. And in that regard, if we really see the tendencies that the biodiversity is getting worse and it's declining, and so does the resilience of the forest, we really have to question whether the formal proposition that we have sustainable forestry around Europe is really true, because if it would be so, there would be no problems with forest species and forest ecosystems, because all three pillars of sustainability would be secured, and that goes also for the environmental pillar. But that definitely is not the reality. The environmental aspect of forest is getting worse and worse throughout Europe, from the Scandinavian countries to the Carpathian Mountains up to the Mediterranean. We are really losing a lot of species. We are losing a connectivity. We are losing the resilience of forests. We see a lot of natural disturbances occurring everywhere. And we see also a lot of, let's say, forest plantations being really like disturbed by bark beetle outbreaks and all that stuff. So this really goes to the direction that we really have to reassess our attitude towards the sustainable forest management and really be critical on that concept and really seek for solution, not keeping the status quo, because it's really getting worse and worse. I would also like to stress that, as I already mentioned, the EU forest strategy really goes beyond the issue of traditional forest management. It encompasses and endorses the actions proposed by the EU biodiversity strategy, which really goes very strictly to the protection of biodiversity. And in that regard, I would like to stress three maybe chapters or points that are included in a current form on the EU forest strategy that aim to the guidelines on closer to nature forestry, which is really beyond the framework of sustainable forestry management, without being a part of it. So there definitely will be guidelines on closer to nature forestry, which probably might encompass activities that would be more strict, so to say, on the preservation of some critical forest stand structures like deadwood and all that stuff. And it should be there probably in the 2023, but it would be, well, based on more or less voluntary principle, and especially in regard with voluntary certification scheme that should be also found in this aspect. There will be definitely a legally binding instrument for ecosystem restoration following this strategy. And this probably would be also the issue that Professor, sorry, I have to find his name. Well, I'll find it later. Sorry for that. But the professor was asking regarding the tree species that are not that commonly used in the plantations or in the forestry. This activity definitely goes to restore those ecosystems that have most potential to capture and store carbon. And if we are talking about the forest ecosystems, it also goes the line that it aims to prevent and reduce the impact of natural disasters. And this is really a very clear message towards the composition of such forest stands. They will have to be much more diverse. Much more tree species should be part of such forest stands that would be used for the restoration of ecosystems. So I think that this is very clear the direction that will find more use for those forest species or tree species that have not been facilitated so much in the previous decades. So yeah, I think that this will really go for the using of those rare tree species. And maybe the last point that I would like to stress, and that I'm very happy of that I see it in the current strategy, is that there will be definitely guidelines, and we will see them in 2021, which means, well, soon enough, on the definition of primary and old growth forest, which are still there throughout Europe. It has already been mentioned by Raphael that there are probably only 3% of current forest that could be assigned to either primary forest or old growth forest. And these really have to be thoroughly monitored and thoroughly mapped or censused in the field. And after that, they must be strictly protected. So put aside any sort of active intervention and active management. Otherwise, we will lose their original structure and original function, and also the original, let's say, biodiversity that is confined to them. In that regard, I am really happy to announce that in Slovakia, we already done the job. We have the census of all the remaining primary forests that are there. And I'm very happy to announce also that from 1st December this year, all the remaining primary forests that were not properly protected, that means in the most strict protection grade, will be protected as in a form of a new nature reserve, the primary forest of Slovakia. So I'm happy that we already contributed to this aim, and I'm sure that other countries will follow as well, and especially those where there are still quite large areas of primary forest preserved, like Romania and Scandinavian countries. But quite frankly, there is a lot of risk that we will lose quite a portion of those forests, because right now there are running many salvage loggings in these areas, and as you definitely should know, salvage logging means a devastation to a primary forest, not the protection of it. So I hope that the Commission will be very fast also in this regard, and we will really focus on the protection of these natural jewels that, like a sort of miracle, are still preserved throughout the mountainous areas of Europe. So it's probably all from my side right now. Back to you.
Thank you so much for your intervention, and I allow myself to have a first question. And it goes directly to your last point, which is the old growth forest, and which is also the definition. Because we do have a definitions. We have the CBD definition, we have the FAO definition for the primary forest. We have the CBD definition for Europe,
when it comes to the primary forest. So is it actually necessary to have our own new definition and not to use those which are already existing? What is the primary forest? Is something which was never logged, as the CBD says? Is it something which was never logged for 80 to 60 years? Is it something which was not logged for 100 years? What is it?
I see the point of the question, and this is really a crucial question because, well, it will all depend on the definition of the primary, which are not that problematic, but the old growth forests raised a lot of concerns about what actually an old growth forest is. I'm sure that there will be a very clear definition at the end when there's the legislation on this issue that will really go for or that will be very clear regarding the issue of the structural and aspects of the and maybe also historical aspects of the primary forest and the old growth forest. But I would say that we will definitely not go beyond the already done preselection that was published recently by Sabatini and his colleagues regarding the primary and old growth forest, which in total go only for about 3% of the current forested area. There might be some let's say problematic issues regarding the definition, but it's quite, I find it really interesting that we don't go only for the primary forests, because if we would go only for that, then we would really have to go for a very strictly, let's say, preserved forested areas, which would really go much beyond the time schedule that you already suggested in your question. I don't think that we can address or define a forest that has been cleared 50 years ago as a primary forest. That's our question. I was a part of the field census in Slovakia, and we were very strict on what should be really addressed like primary forest. The absence of hints of intervention was only one of the aspects that should have been assessed. So you could not see any sort of let's say stumps or roads within the census area, but it also went on the attributes of coarse woody debris or dead wood, and also some threshold on the presence of let's say veteran trees. So these were aspects that were all assessed, and I also would suggest that such aspects will have to be the essence of the definition of primary forest within the European Union, that actually will be then strictly protected. But the real problem goes with the old growth forest, because it's very clear that these are not primary forests. This is a broader scale of forests, which are also essential and very crucial for the preservation of the forest ecosystems in regard of connectivity and minimum area and all that stuff. And they also would have to be strictly protected. So this is what I am really curious about, to see what the definition of this old growth forest will be, because really it depends on the scale or maybe on the details that will be included, because otherwise you could attribute the parameter of old growth forest to much broader area than those 3%. So I think that we will very much stick to the definition that is established there in the article of the Sabatini. So if you are curious about more details, check that article. It's really a very nice article that has been published in 2021, I suppose. So go for it and see the details. I don't think that the European Commission will go beyond that definition.
Are we actually, if we see the focus on the forest, to focus on the upscaling, reusing all the materials, are we at the edge of the market conflict between wood and related industries, the public interest to keep these residues in the forest, and the bioenergy sector, who is actually in terms of would like to use that as to the biggest extent? Are we there? Are we there not yet? Or it's just a question of the time?
Yeah, it will have to be dealt with, I say, because the interests from the bioenergy sector are enormous. and even if there would be no increase in the consumption of woody biomass, we already have it like huge. From the data that I have seen, around 50% of roundwood that is being logged throughout Europe is being burned without any added value already. So we are talking about 50% of the logging that goes directly to the combustions without any added value in the form of whatever products can be done from that wood, and we see a tendency to even increase this proportion. So we will have to be really very precautious not to go too far. Although I am afraid that we have already gone too far. But you know, the situation is really very critical, because even the Commission is very clear that if we want to reach our, let's say, climate targets, we have to use the renewable sources of energy, and the biomass must play quite a role in that, which I am really like thrilled to hear, because I don't think that the physics around it will actually work. I don't really am very much fan of the idea that burning wood would somehow improve the situation with climate, but I am very sure that it will very much worsen the situation with forest, not only with the residues, but with overall increase in timber production or timber logging, and overall tendencies to decrease the rotation period within logged forest. And also we have to address the issues of illegal logging that is also out there throughout Europe, and is really doing a lot of harm both to the economy and to the ecology of the forest. So the Commission goes a little bit that way, that you know, you have to have this cascade principle and all that stuff, but still, if the situation is that there is no cascading involved in 50% of the logged timber, it's quite an issue of its own, and we cannot go any farther within this line. So I think that there will be quite a struggle regarding this issue. The push from the bioenergy industry is huge. You can't even comprehend how huge it is. And well, me and my colleagues in the parliament, we really have to stay on the guard and try to prevent even further worsening of the situation, because I am quite clear and I'm quite aware of the impacts such strategies and such approach would have on the remaining forest. And as I have already stated, the situation is not good at all. The forests are getting worse and worse in their quality, and this will even worsen the situation. So we really have to be on the patrol, not to allow the, let's say, bioenergy industry to really get beyond the red line. And I would also ask you, colleagues from the universities, if you know about such issues, you should be heard of. The Commission will really be responsible to most of your appeals. But for instance, if you see the line that the ministries of agricultures are reacting or addressing this issue in the council, and also addressing this issue with the Commission, you see that there is quite a lot of hesitance to really have some more thorough monitoring of the situation, or more thorough, let's say, indicators that should be included in the overall assessment of the impact that our society is having on the forest. And that is quite an advantage for the bioeconomy industry, but on the other hand, quite a disadvantage for the remaining forests that are there, that we should really also tend to protect, because there is a general rule that you should do no additional harm when dealing or tackling one crisis. So if we are tackling really the biodiversity crisis by burning more and more of wood, we definitely should do no harm on the forest ecosystem and on the bioenergy, on the biodiversity. But I'm afraid this is not possible if we increase the harvest and the use of the residues and all the issues that are related to the high consumption of biomass that we are planning to do.
Now, I would like to give floor to our last speaker, to Michal Jedličková.
Michal Jedličková is based on the permanent representation of the Czech Republic to the European Union. She is responsible for forestry and edible topics, and before her engagement as the permanent representation of the Czech Republic to the European Union, she worked at the Ministry of Agriculture of the Czech Republic.
First of all, thank you for inviting me to present to you the position of the Czech Republic. I also attended the council meeting of Agrifish Council that were mentioned just right now. And I can surely clear some positions of member states and mainly of the Czech Republic and how we see the forest strategy from our point. I prepared a little presentation with some speaking points. The most was already said by my predecessors. As was said, the strategy was published this year in July, and it was prepared by the Commission. It was the third strategy, forest strategy in a row. Two before were really prepared in cooperation with member states, because as was said before, forestry policy is not mentioned in Treaty on the Function of the European Union, so the member states see it as their own competence. There are a lot of shared competencies, on forests, but the core of the forestry policy, member states still see it as their competence. During the preparation of the strategy, it was discussed on many levels. It was discussed on council level and also in European Parliament. European Parliament prepared a resolution. Council prepared conclusions on the preparation of forest strategy. It highlighted, among other things, mainly the necessity of cooperation between European Commission and member states during preparation of such documents, because, as I said, we still see it as our competence. Strategy is, of course, linked to European Green Deal and Fit for 55 package, and also to the strategy on biodiversity. And it's very interconnected and very horizontal. So as you can imagine, it's also a little bit of exercise for member states to prepare their positions, because several ministries are involved in such a document. For the member states, it's really important to communicate preparation of such document in advance. Objectives of the strategy were already mentioned. The main theme that is in the strategy is the environmental one. So it was already mentioned that the balance is needed, and the multifunctionality of forest is very important for us. After the strategy was already published, member states were preparing other council conclusions that were linked to the first ones prepared the year before. And these council conclusions were approved on the Agrifish Council this November. The main theme of the council conclusions, which is a document prepared by all member states, and all member states approved of this document and the ideas mentioned there, is that we should focus on the multifunctionality of forests, because of course, the environmental role is really important, and we see it as we welcome the ambition that is mentioned in the first strategy, and we really want to work in this way. But it's the economical point of view is also important for member states. We need to balance the environmental, economical, and social function of forests from our point of view. Also, we need to have in mind that European forests are very diverse. As I said, that the forest policy is for member states is their competency. So there is a lot of diversity in management of forest and in how the forests look also in member states. We cannot compare Czech forest, Spanish forest. We totally different way how they are maintained and how they look. We also have to have in mind the outermost regions of European Union, because they are also part of European Union, and there will be influenced by the strategy also. And so we need to respect the specificities of forest also from the cultural and historical perspective. So we don't see the one size fits all approach to be helpful. We think that it could be more counterproductive. Now, as I said, the council conclusions were approved, and we hope that they would serve as a guideline for the Commission, where the member states would like to proceed when the legislation would be implemented. We are looking forward to cooperate with the Commission on the implementation and cooperation on the preparation on a legislative framework that will be prepared. Of course, it would take time, because from as I said, in every member state, there are several ministries involved in this policy, and there is great diversity in European Union between member states, and every member state has a little bit different point of view, different needs, and is on a different level of preparation for implementation of the strategy. We really welcome the ambition, and we think that the main issue is the coherence of European strategies and coherence with preparation of member states for implementation of those strategies. Because as it was said, the forest strategy is linked to European Green Deal, Fit for 55, biodiversity strategy. There are a lot of objectives of these strategies, and when we a little bit change one part, we have to change the same part in other strategies, and really make sure that it's coherent and it's cooperative, and it supports the document supports the aim, but it will be really a lot of work to not be counterproductive in any of these initiatives. From my part, I think I presented like the main position of member states of the Czech Republic, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. I just wanted also to react to my predecessors, that Mr. Vězik said that we are against additional monitoring of forests and new indicators. Our position is more that we want to build on existing structures, not create new ones, because there exists some process inside Forest Europe, inside FAO, that can be used already. Eurostat also has a lot of data already, and we would really like to build on existing structures, not create new ones, avoid any additional administrative burden, because from member states' position, there is a lot of administrative work behind all of these initiatives. So we want to avoid it and avoid any additional financial burden on member states.
Thank you for your intervention.
Thanks, Mireia. Thanks, Michael, for this interesting viewpoints you presented us. You were focusing on the aspect of sustainable forestry. In my opinion, or I think, to maximize, to optimize these benefits of sustainable forestry, we should widen this definition. We should widen this term on something like sustainable application of bio-based materials. No? Do you think that this discussion is happening in the EU, in the Parliament, in the Commission? Let me give one example to explain it a little bit deeper. For the carbon storage, of course, the sustainability of the forest are very, very important. But we can optimize, we can maximize this aspect by making use of long life products. No? So under the viewpoint of carbon storage, wooden roof, a wooden building, a wooden piano, Stradivari has a much, much higher value than a newspaper or a piece of firewood. No? So do you think that this discussion, do you think that this kind of a ranking is happening in the EU, that this discussion is aware, maybe reflecting in a different ranking of supporting projects or industry projects? What do you think about this aspect? How important this is in the moment in the EU?
Well, the essence or the sustainability principle has to be there everywhere and in every possible legislation that is there, and this is very, very clear. Problem is whether this sustainability is real or just formal, as I already mentioned. And in that regard, I would really stress that the current system of sustainability that is being used, for instance, in forestry, is not thorough enough. It really allows the some problems that are related with the management to stay under the radar and not being detected by the sustainability, let's say, criteria that are there in the field. That's why the Parliament and also the Commission is asking to really add some more of the indications. I really don't care whether these will be adding new principles or we will build upon the existing one, but the conclusion will be the same. There has to be more indication and more thorough assessment of the sustainability, because the current situation or the current system is not fit for the purpose. Instance just to be concrete, you mentioned the collapsing spruce forest in Czech Republic, and from the sustainability perspective, this is a disaster for the economic pillar. This is the disaster for the social pillar, and this is also disaster for the environmental pillar. So the sustainability is trembling like this in this collapsing forest stands. And the question is there certification being withdrawn, or are they still formally sustainably managed? And the question is that there is not a chance. There is not a change. Sorry, these forests, even though collapsing due to climate change and previous management failures, are still sustainably managed. And if it goes like this, we will really lose most of the forest and still being proud that they all are sustainably managed. That's why I'm asking for being more stringent, for being more precise, and adding more indicator values that really could really find and point to these issues, because these issues are there and they will not perish only by adding more certification schemes or something like that. So yes, the cascading principle that was mentioned by Peter is crucial one, but the current situation is not good, because as I already mentioned, 50% of the timber is going to the incinerators without any added value. And if you go for the data, only 4% of the timber wood will be there 60 years after being cut. Only 4% is being really, of the carbon is really being found in the long-lasting products like houses and pianos and I don't know, bookshelves. But the rest, or the 50% of the timber wood is in the atmosphere in the form of CO2 in the first 5 years after being cut. So this is the problem that we really face, and this is really the issue which I am targeting so much, because if we go this way, we can forget that the burning of more wood will really improve the climate situation. So we really have to be critical on that aspect, also in the Commission and in the Parliament. But I'm afraid that the current setup and the paradigm is really going the direction to burn even more wood, which is very dangerous for the forest and for the climate as well.
Is there any of the speakers who would like to react on this intervention?
Yes, if I can also add something. So I agree with what Michal said here, and we need to be careful. And so on one side, a broadening of sustainability, as in taking into account sustainable everywhere. So now for forest, it's in the forest management, but then as you said, also in the use. But then on the other hand, we have to be careful about this formalized use of sustainability, where until now we've used the word sustainability too easily and called a lot of things sustainable, which are very questionable to be called this. And yeah, when it comes to bioenergy, this is of course a very hotly debated topic also within the European Commission. And the current situation where we burn this much roundwood is of course not something that we want to promote, and we will, and this will be an ongoing discussion, yeah, within all European institutions and also member states, of how we solve this problem for bioenergy in the future, for the climate side on one side, but also biodiversity.
And I would like to warmly thank you for coming, for sharing the views with us. Have a nice day.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Bye.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.